Larry Haber, a reformed yet long-recovered developer and now managing partner of the commercial real estate department of AGMB Law, as well as a non-practicing CPA and the creator of Leasing REality, conducts an ongoing series of conversations infused with rock and roll, hip-hop, sports, pop culture, and historical questions with real estate and other business rock stars, designed to empower aspiring, emerging, and seasoned professionals and business owners to build a better foundation for both today and tomorrow.
Today we have with us on Real Estate Reality Check two renowned leaders who have played an integral role during their illustrious careers in making a difference for their clients, those that they work with, as well as for the commercial real estate industry. Namely the dynamic duo and vice chairpersons of investment sales and retail leasing, respectfully, for Compass, my dear friends Adelaide Polsinelli and Robin Abrams. Thank you so much for joining us and for being the charter members of a new series playing off the name of music legend Frank Zappa's old band, the Mothers of Reinvention. So let's get right to it, my friends. Thank you. Adelaide, with props out to the name of Zappa's song, "You Are What You Is," as well as to Popeye, your favorite sailor and mine, and his famous line, I should say, "I am what I am." With modesty aside, Adelaide, please tell us who you are and why it has played a starring role in successfully representing your client base over the years.
So who I am, first of all, thank you, Larry, for having us. This is a lot of fun. It's great to be socializing in these days. Who I am, this is my fifth real estate cycle. Who I am is someone who knows what to expect and how to protect. My clients rely on me for guidance and strategies because I am cycle tested. I know how to navigate the hairpin turns and how to make prudent decisions for them. I know how to be there. I know how to navigate through all the issues that come up. I am around 24/7. They can find me when they need me. I get my hands dirty. I get in the trenches with them, either to help them, hold their hands, or give them advice.
Okay, fabulous. So, but this one, I've been, the same. This is my fifth cycle, starting with the resolution trust days, and this one is, needless to say, totally different because theoretically it's not man or woman made. There's the great unknown, and there's this little issue called life, health, and safety, and everyone's opinions are all over the place. How do you find this one to be different? If you could just say it in a few short words, either one of you, how different is this than the other four?
So they all seem different at the time we're in them. We're in the middle of the storm. We are in the eye of the storm. It's scary. Everything is different. However, cycles all behave the same. It's just a different reason. It's a different calamity. It's a different motivation. It's a different impetus. So once we get our arms and heads around the fact that it is a cycle and it will behave as one, you can navigate what's going to happen. I mean, it's predictable. What's scary, it's health related now, and there's no one enemy. There's no, we're not going after a 9/11 terrorist. We're not going after the credit issue. It's not a stock market issue. It's a medical issue. It's a health issue. So it's different in that respect. But at the end of the day, it's a cycle. It's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Yeah, and we'll deal. The bottom line is we have no choice. Is what it comes down to.
I like that Adelaide mentioned the eye of the storm. And when people ask me what's going on, I like to say that we're in the middle of a perfect storm because, as we're all saying, we have the pandemic, which is exacerbating conditions that were already starting to be a down cycle. In particular, with regard to our retail rents, we had a lot of vacancy. We had, frankly, a needed natural correction in part. And then, of course, everything went down much further than anticipated because of the pandemic. But we're already seeing a little bit more engagement. And I think it's going to be a couple of years before the cycle upticks. But I agree that we are in a cycle and that there will be light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, if you sit there and you are, you have a negative outlook on everything, then life and your business is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy of, we'll say poof, we'll keep it clean. So Robin, So a kudos out to the name of Jimi Hendrix's old band, namely that of The Experience. And his song, Have You Ever Been Experienced? Tell us about how your varied work experiences, including that of dancing, prior to becoming a top retail broker, helped you over the years to reinvent yourself, or I should say, build upon the manner in which you've adopted to changes in trends, the economy, e-commerce, and social behaviors now due to COVID-19.
So I came to New York decades ago with a degree in dance and Spanish literature. I don't know what I was thinking. I got a job at the Lansco Corporation working part-time as an admin. You know, it was either that, restaurants, house cleaning, go-go dancing, whatever I was doing to pay the rent. And I think being in the New York environment as an artist, it taught me resilience. I didn't take things personally. I couldn't. You know, you would go to 20 auditions and you would be rejected and you would be rejected. And so I say to my guys that are on the phone canvassing, like, you know, this is life. You have to get used to the rejection and the potential feeling of failure. And you have to use that to fuel you to keep going and to be persistent. So I think having started out in New York that way taught me, number one, to multitask, to be hungry, because I had to literally pay my bills and eat. You know, there were days where it would be like, what do you mean we have to buy toilet paper? We don't have money for toilet paper. So, you know, we were living 4 girls in a dump on West 30th Street before the days of Hudson Yards, when it was, you know, considered around Madison Square Garden, and it wasn't very pretty. So again, I think it taught me to be extremely focused, not take things personally, not give up, have a great work ethic, as we're saying, is so necessary, particularly in today's world. And all of those things translated into how I conduct myself with regard to real estate. I think going back to you talking about being collaborative and working in and out of the office, you know, certainly in our business, I've always believed in embracing others, whether they're on my side of the table or the other side of the table. So all of the things that I learned when I first came to New York and I had to survive, whether it was in dancing, working in an office, or when I got my license and started doing leasing, I think have translated throughout the rest of my career. You know, those basic principles don't change.
Oh, yeah, and bottom line is, all those things you've learned over the years, they now come in handy. It's part of your tool chest, so to speak. And you know, it's just like, listen, I was an accounting major undergrad, and believe it or not, you know, I was an auditor at one point in place in time, and I did not want to do that, and my mother begged me to stay with it, and I did. And her line was, "You'll always have something to fall back on." And when the Great Recession hit 10, 12 years ago, the fact that I had that experience helped me dramatically. It was part of my tool chest, you know, and it helps in the experiences when you're dealing with, you know, obviously the myriad of issues that come our way. So Adelaide, your turn, my friend. Playing off of one of my top 10, you know, favorite Grateful Dead songs, namely that of U.S. Blues. There's a line in it that goes, "Son of a gun, you better change your act." And so given all the changes in life, mindsets, and business due to COVID-19, how have you changed your act, Adelaide, as you adapt to this, we'll call it the new abnormal that we all are facing right now?
So I'll start by saying I think I've become a Zoom bee. It's very replacing how we socialize. It's replacing how we communicate, which has some good strengths to it. I still believe there's nothing like the personal one-on-one meeting with someone, even if it's 6 feet apart. I am still doing a lot of the things I've done before, but most of them now have been changed by adding this degree of technology. As you can see, I'm still getting my wits about me with that. But, you know, we're with Compass, and Compass is known for this. Compass is a tech-based real estate firm. This is what they've been waiting for. So when everyone else was trying to figure out how to do Zoom meetings, we had them already. We already did virtual tours for years. So we have the technology here. We just had to implement it. Those of us that didn't use it on a regular basis learned how to use it, but it was here already. So for us, we had all the tools we needed. It was not so hard. The hard part is not seeing your clients in person and not doing the things that we usually do, which would be going to our events right now. This is the middle of holiday season. How do we not go to 15 parties a week?
Oh, I know. It's unbelievable. I'm actually getting sleep, which is something that I'm not exactly known for, but it's difficult because, it helps, when, as far as the change that we could still be in touch with our clients, it's meeting new people. Listen, when we go to all these events, and I don't know how many nights a week you went out, and whether you call that networking or just enjoying yourself, or some combo of the two, you always would somehow you go somewhere and you'd run into somebody, or you'd be introduced to somebody by someone else. That doesn't happen anymore. And that's probably one of the bigger challenges that I think a lot of people are facing. Not to get too deep, but Yeats, the poet, had a line that goes, "Strangers aren't strangers, just friends that haven't yet met." We're missing that opportunity is what it comes down to. And that's something that's difficult. And listen, hopefully we'll be able to replace it in some way, shape, or form.
I think there are opportunities. We have to work so much harder, though, to keep connected. Tonight, there's a WX Gala, and it is online, virtual only, cocktail attire. And basically, we will be sitting in front of our screen having drinks, but then they are doing breakout rooms similar to, as if you were at a function and you were sitting at a particular table. So it's been interesting to see, as we've been on Zoom and not in person, how some of these events have evolved.
Really? I love that. Let me know how that goes, because I'm curious as to how, if it's just going to be you having a conversation one-on-one, or it's going to be sitting at a table of 6 or 8. I'm curious as to how that more works out. So, Robin, I'm going to stick with you. Yogi Berra, he once said that if you ask me anything I don't know, I'm not going to answer. So I want you to expand on Yogi's genius and how it applies to the lost art of listening when one is negotiating.
So that's a great question. And I do think it's one of the harder things to learn as a business person. I like to talk a lot, sometimes too much. And, my husband is 20 years senior. He was very successful for many years in international trade. And he would consistently say to me, "Don't talk, you need to listen. You will be surprised how much you learn if you just listen." And he drilled that into me. And, I had 6 partners at Lansco, all men. And so I think, and also senior, and they had been in business for a long time. And it was something that they all drilled into me. And so over the years, I think I became a very good listener. And I think I did learn a lot before I opened my mouth and spoke or, did my due diligence and move forward on deals. And I think that's one of the more important things that I've had to teach my brokers, young and old, that even though we know a lot and we think that we can offer up great opinions and suggestions and instructions, it's always better to remind yourself, wait and see what they have to say. Ask them some questions. See what you can learn. You'd be surprised if you ask people questions. Look, that's what you're great at doing that, Larry. What you can learn from them. So yeah, I think learning to listen is probably one of the most important things in being a successful business person, regardless of, what your field of expertise is.
Yeah, and I sometimes harp on this on prior episodes because, what you just said is so apropos, but when you're sitting at the negotiating table, when we're actually sitting around, and now we're sitting here and we can have 8 people on a conference call of 10, you learn the pulse of everyone, what gets them hot, what gets them not. And you learn about certain mindsets and tells when you're sitting back. And it took me, I didn't have a mentor who told me, because obviously once I start talking, I don't shut up. No one told me, dude, you just gotta sit back and chill. I was always the first person. And it took me into my late 30s to truly learn that, which is fairly incredible. Okay. And it's so it's part of why I harp on it. I became so much better, at what we do once I learned the lesson, so to speak, of, the reason why you got two ears and one mouth. Theoretically, you should listen at least twice as much as you talk, maybe more than that. But it's like, that's why I asked you the question, because it's just something that seemingly is just out there. It's too much, and it's something that troubles me a little bit, that we don't listen enough. But so Adelaide, there was a baseball player for the Yankees years ago named Rex Hudler. He's also a baseball commentator now. And he used to like to say, be a fountain, not a drain. So when it comes to how you market yourself and brand yourself on social media, how are you a fountain and not a drain? Or a better way of stating it, how are you a giver, okay, and not a taker, so to speak?
So I took that as being effervescent, in that my messaging is positive.
Absolutely.
And, keeping things optimistic. Remember, and I do this very, disciplined fashion, in a disciplined fashion. What's on the internet stays there forever. You can't get rid of it. So you have to be super diligent about what you say and how you present yourself. It doesn't go away, and it will come up at the weirdest times. So you don't want to be in the middle of a negotiations and someone finds something stupid that you said on the internet. So the messaging has to be very concise, clear, optimistic, and laser focused, because if you want some kind of action from whoever your audience is, you need to have a call for action in there. So I keep mine professional. I stick with LinkedIn because it does have, I think, a wider audience than anyone else, and it's more serious.
Oh, it's the biggest networking group in the world for commercial, for real estate, plain and simple. Okay, so I hear you loud and clear. Yeah, I was always like, when the internet came out and my kids were, 8, 9, 10, and they started going out on it more, and I was like, dudes, listen, we had a good time growing up, but you know what? Nobody knows about it. There's no thumbprint, so to speak. Whatever you're putting on, the internet, whatever message you're putting out there, that's a thumbprint that stays with you. So it's unfortunate. You have to be a little bit more careful. And the same applies. Listen, if you're sitting here and you're thinking about doing business with someone, or you're going to hire someone, the bottom line is you do look people up, and it's important as to how you go brand yourself and the message that you want to get out there. So Robin, back in '79, not to date us, there was a song called "Video Killed the Radio Star." So, and I know Compass is tech-based, but, what are your thoughts as to whether the advent of all these virtual brokerages and technology will be killing off many brokers? And while you're at it, try to channel in the title of the Bruce Springsteen song, "Human Touch," as to why commercial real estate brokers in particular will always be an integral part of the transaction.
Yeah, human touch is the key. And as we've been saying, contact and interaction and embracing one another to get things done. So it's interesting because Compass, I think when they began, thought that because they were highly technology based, that they would not depend as much on the brokers. And what they actually found, in fact, was that the opposite was what was going to be their focus, that they were instead going to make their business all about coming up with great technology and marketing to enable their brokers, because they realized that the business is all about the service that the agents provide to the clients.
Exactly.
So it's been really interesting to see Compass evolve, and I think that's the key to their success, that they use technology. They've developed great marketing tools, but they don't lose sight of the fact that it is a people business. Our business has always been about information and relationships. The information everybody now has. And again, I think Compass does a great job of compiling and presenting that info, which is really important in order to be competitive. But everybody has access to good info. So if you don't have people who can get the deals done, I think that you're at a loss. And we're starting to see, interestingly enough, I think people shy away from, the street easies and this and that and the loop nets. They realize that there's maybe some information available, but again, they don't know how to look at the info, understand and position it, get the details, negotiate the deals. They don't have the relationships with the landlords or the other parties. And so I think it's going actually back to dependence on brokers to represent clients to get the deals done. So I don't think that the real estate agents on the commercial or the residential side are going anywhere. If anything, again, I think that our business is becoming more lucrative and that we're here to stay.
Adelaide, you have anything to add to that, my friend?
To Robin's point about reading data, I mean, you really need a translator, someone who can read through those tea leaves. Comps are not all the same. And what we're seeing is a lot of these aggregating sites will put together comps that they have no clue about. And then when you go and read them, you see one property sold for $1,000 a foot and the property next door sold for $300 a foot. And maybe one of them added in the air rights and one didn't. Maybe one of them used a loss factor and the other one didn't. So you really need that master of evaluation, which is a broker, to come in and tell you what exactly is going on. If you're spending millions of dollars on a home or a building, you want to know that there's someone who's educated, experienced, and knowledgeable on the other end.
Oh, absolutely. It's, as to the data, I use this line every now and then. Eric Clapton has a song called "It's in the Way That You Use It." So it's the data. It's great. You have this information. What does it mean? And then you sit there and once you know what it means, how do you disseminate it? What do you want to tell the world, your clients, whoever, and what don't you? And when do you break it out at the appropriate time? The other is part of what I'm hearing, different things, and that it's, you need to be a combination of old school and new school. It's just, it's the same way. Listen, when you're sitting there and, listen, these deals take on a life of their own all the time. And when you're negotiating a lease, how does a lease negotiation sometimes take 2, 3, 4 months? It's mind-boggling, that it could actually happen that way. And the way that I try and, cut it down is that I do a little thing called talking. Okay, you just can't exchange. Yeah, it's great you exchange red lines and all that. That doesn't get the deal done. Okay, you need to actually.
I think there are a couple of other points as well. By and large, in our business in particular, on the commercial side, we're doing substantial deals. There is so much off-market information that we gather based on our relationships with people in the industry that a layperson would never get access to. So it broadens the scope of what they're presented and they consider. And then going back to learning to listen in terms of negotiation, I think that more often than not, sophisticated tenants understand that if they're going to use a broker, they're going to end up ahead of the game. It's not going to cost them money, and it's going to save them money in the long run and protect them from all of the kinds of issues that you end up having to clean up as an attorney.
Oh, listen, at the very basic level, if you're a tenant and you don't have a broker representing you, think of the calculus. You're talking to someone on the landlord side who for a living rents out space. If you're on the tenant side, what do? Theoretically, you rent out space to conduct a business to make a profit. Who's going to have the upper hand in that negotiation? The person with the knowledge of real estate or the person that's not? It's part of the reason why you do need a broker, So, but let's move on from there. There's a song, this is for you, Adelaide, and Rob, if you want to chime in afterwards. It's called "The Heart of the Matter" by Don Henley of the Eagles. And there's a line that's perpetually sung by him, and it's called, or it's stated as, "I think it's about forgiveness." And, speaking of forgiveness, the New York City Senator Michael Gianaris, who played not only a starring role in killing, Long Island City's Amazon deal last year, he recently proposed legislation to cancel rent payments. That was back in March. And there's been now recent pleas by him, to Biden, to do so for residential tenants and small businesses impacted by COVID. So commercial as well. And under this proposal, at least landlords who have been impacted, if there is going to be this diminished rent, they would receive some level of forgiveness on their mortgages, but the lenders would receive no relief. So trying not to get political. I know it's tough to do so on this question. Can you give your perspective as to some of his suggestions, so to speak? This whole thing about cancel rent.
So it's hard not to get political, but I'm going to give it a shot. First, I'm going to say, I have two things to say, and then we could go and pick them apart. The first one I have to say is that for every politician who believes in canceling rent or anyone's financial obligations, they should lead by example. And what I mean by that is they should not collect a paycheck. They should not collect any interest on any of their investments whatsoever. They need to feel the same pain that their constituents feel. So if they're telling tenants not to pay, they're telling borrowers not to pay, but yet there's still someone holding the bag, which is the bank, which is always someone at the end of the line that they're not paying attention to. I want every politician to be that person, be the one at the end of the line, and see how that feels before you make these broad sweeping statements about canceling obligations that people spend years putting together. One. Secondly, I think every politician must go back to school and take a class in Economics 101, because they're losing touch with all of the things that create value, sustain value, and maintain value in New York City, especially. We can't have people canceling everything that they've ever obligated to pay. And then, magically with one wand, it's all going to go back to normal. No, we need a fiscal plan that is smart. We have impotent leadership right now in our government here in the city, and it's really hurting us. And until that changes, we really have to hold on tight, because this is going to be a wild ride.
Oh, yeah, it already is. Robin, before I chime in, any thoughts on that one? Piggybacking?
Yeah. And, I do a lot of tenant reps, so I feel our tenants' pain. And I know that a lot of them have been very dependent on the moratorium on eviction and going after good guys and such. And they would not be in business if they didn't have that, safety net. So, what's the solution? I think Adelaide's right in terms of government taking more responsibility. And if you look at what's happened in other countries, you have government stepping in, giving subsidies to businesses and or giving this stimulus sort of payment to people so that they can then pay the bills and meet their obligations. And you don't have the trickle down effect. And then also there's the question of the city and real estate taxes. So everybody is very, very concerned that with what is going on, rather than have a break for people in the form of reduced real estate tax, there may be increases with more obligations on business people. So all of these things, they're not easy problems to solve, but yes, the way to do it is for government to use the money that they are contributing wisely so that it can keep the economy to some extent running.
Yeah, well said. So, so picking on some of the things, and piggybacking, positively on some of the things you said, one of the courses that they also need to take, Adelaide, is a course on something called empathy. Okay, because you can't, and I've said this too many times over the last 6-7 months. I probably represent tenants these days 2-to-1 over landlords, maybe a drop more. But it's like, I am not doing my job if I don't have empathy for the person sitting on the other side of the table. You can't drop all of what's gone on the doorstep of either landlord or tenant. It's just not there. There has to be some sharing of the pain. Okay, and so when some of these rules are either one-sided as the tenant or one-sided as the landlord, it's just not right. You have to have empathy. That's one of the things. The other thing is, it just reminds me of what you just said. Ronald Reagan, this isn't a political statement, he had a line. He goes, what are the 9 most scary words in the English language? And that is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And he was anti-government. He tried to basically let the people run. Okay, and I didn't really realize this at the time. I was in college. But it's a great line. But the point is, there needs to be a collaboration of 4 parties. Okay, what are the 4 parties? Landlords, tenants, the government, and the banks. Okay, that could even be a 5th. Some people say the insurance companies because of what's going on with force majeure and insurance. And until they like basically, you know, come to the party and start dancing together, there's going to be all these disconnects that are going on, you know. So it makes it a little too interesting. But and that's why it's, you know, all the negotiations, you know, I spent the first 6 months of this pandemic talking landlords and tenants off the ledge. You know, fortunately, no one's has jumped yet, but it's, you know, it hasn't been pretty. It's because there's been all this disconnect. Yes, with the politicians. Yes, with people not having empathy for one another. But, you know, listen, there's many chapters still to be written is what it comes down to here, you know, on this. And I think, unfortunately, with the second wave maybe coming upon us here, you know, at least restructuring is going to come back into vogue, which is, you know, it's going to make for interesting conversations and a little too much stress.
Yeah, I mean, we're finding that, you know, we did the same thing for the first 3 months. Much of what we were doing all day was mitigating for landlords and tenants with lease amendments, whether it was deferrals, abatements, reductions, combinations of all that. A lot of those scenarios covered, you know, the parties through the fall, max through the end of the year. And so now, I won't say the word, but it's hitting the fan, because as you say, everybody we dealt with and we thought that we resolved the immediate pressure for is now under pressure again and having to decide what they're going to do. And the landlords and the tenants are having to re-engage and readdress this because we're not out of the woods.
So just Adelaide, yeah, something came to mind as Robin was just saying that. So on the investment sales side of things, everyone is out there. There's a lot of theoretically dry powder out there ready to invest, but everyone is trying to channel. There's an Elvis Costello song called Opportunity. Okay. And there's a line in it that goes something like, this is your big opportunity to shop around. And people are doing this. So from the standpoint of landlords, do you find a lot of them are ready to accept this new reality and, you know, price capitulation as far as trying to lower their price, or it's still waiting and seeing what's going to go on?
So I'm going to say that we're in the 5 stages of grief, and we're probably somewhere in the first 2. We're not at acceptance yet. We're a little bit in denial. We're getting angry. We're seeing people frustrated. There's not the acceptance level that we would like to see, but you know, you have to hope that maybe there is going to be some stopgate that will hold up values to some degree, because I don't want to say that they're free falling, but they are not finding a bottom yet. We are doing deals. The difference now than 6 months ago, 10 months ago, is that my buyers are now users, which is a new trend that I've been seeing. 6 deals I did in the past 2 months, which is a lot of activity considering we had nothing going on from March till September. The 4 of those 6 were users buying a space or a building to put their businesses in, where they weren't on the radar a year ago.
That is interesting. You know, listen, it's a changing world, and it's just like, you know, it's you know, what's the line? Adapt or die, and that's what, you know, has to happen. You know, I just found the first video I did when I started doing videos back in 2009 was about lease restructuring, and it was a 5-part series. And I said in the opening video something along the lines that price capitulation is a good thing, and you can't keep on dwelling, you know, basically dwelling on the corner of Fetch Avenue and Wine Street, dwelling on what no longer is and will never be again today. And if you don't embrace what is going on around you, you very well may become a newly appointed member of the middle class. You know, and when I said that at the time, people, like, in fact, people were doing, and I was doing a video, people were looking at me like, you know, like, what are you, out of your mind? Are you smoking crack for breakfast? You know, it was amazing. People, it was a shocking statement to state it, and I don't think it's such a shocking statement then or now. Okay, but I think people I think, you know, yes, the 5 stages of grief is a great analogy, you know, as to, you know, what's going on. But hopefully, you know, there'll be more acceptance of the reality. So, Adelaide, I'm gonna ask you this question, and it's preceded by a statement. You know, the classic song "R.E.S.P.E.C.T." by the late and great Aretha Franklin was somewhat of an anthem in the late 60s for the women's movement. A more recent musical ode to women was by Drake in different situations and struggles, but it was called, you know, Dice for What. So is there anything you would like to say to those who don't quite grasp the meaning of respect when it comes to women in commercial real estate and how they should treat their peers, and while you're at it, why women should be compensated and promoted on a level equal to males?
That's a big one. I'm going to start with the very top. We are all created equal. So to me, if you give, you have to give it to get it.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody deserves a respectful situation in real estate or any part of their lives. Everyone is entitled to be treated fairly. What we're finding in real estate, first, I'm going to say, and I've said it a few times, there aren't as many women interested in working in real estate. So let's start with that. Secondly, you have to earn it and you have to demand it. So Robin and I were having this conversation earlier today. You have to kick the door in and take your place at the table and not wait for someone to let you in, not wait for someone to hand you a seat. You have to go take it and you have to command attention and respect. Once you do that, it's almost like training a pet. Once you train people that this is what you deserve, you will get it. Now, that's not true in every industry, but in our industry, it seems to ring true. You have to push the door in, you got to kick it in, and you got to sit down at the table and just take your place. Everyone should be equal. That doesn't mean they're treated equally, but they should be. I think what we've seen in Robin and I, when we started in the industry, it was very different for women. We were, women were more competitive than collaborative. Men were always collaborative, and then they formed alliances. Women are just catching on to that. And again, I'm going to say that there weren't so many women in the earlier days, and there still aren't as many women. So women are now learning to be collaborative and learning to band together and form those alliances. And I think the future is going to be extremely bright for them. They will not have to deal with the challenges Robin and I had to deal with when we started in this business. So I think the path has been paved, and they have a lot of opportunities today that they did not have 10 and 20 years ago.
So I read something, and that's so true what you said. I read something in the Commercial Observer in the last week that you were asked not this particular question, but about the dearth of women in commercial real estate. And your reply was talking about what it's been like just in the recent past, that of all the people you've interviewed, there's been essentially no women. It's all young people coming at you who are men. Is that essentially, what you're finding?
Yeah, sadly. I mean, I was a magnet for women that wanted to enter the industry. They would come to me because, I was someone they could relate to. They could see a path that they could maybe get on at some point. And I would get 10, 15 women coming in and interviewing for a position here in whatever level of real estate they wanted to get in. Most would come just to get advice and just to get some sense of, form a bond and form some relationship, form a mentorship. I don't have any women in the past, all right, it's a pandemic, but in the past year, I'm going to say, maybe call it 10 months, not a single woman has come by. But I've had probably 6 guys coming by saying, I need a mentor. I want to talk to you. I want to know a little bit more about what I can do in the industry, what opportunities are available. And I have a warm spot for anyone young who wants to try to get into an industry that they have nothing, no framework of reference for. But it's interesting to see no women coming by.
Yeah,
I do think that I think, to your credit, Adelaide, that investment sales is a more difficult discipline than, for instance, retail leasing for women to break into, in part because there are fewer women. And also, I think that, and not to diminish what I do, but I think that it really does require lots of skill sets, like focus. You've got to be tough. You've got to not be intimidated by everyone else in the industry. So probably fewer women are comfortable finding a seat at the table in the investment sales arena than they are with retail leasing. Retail leasing, they think, oh, I'd like to shop. I'll be a retail broker. I'll go find a store for someone. And that doesn't mean that qualifies them to be a good retail broker, but I think that's the mindset.
That's an interesting perspective. So I'm going to stick with you, Robin, on that. So this is if you remember, there was a 1980s video and the song, by Lionel Richie called Dancing on the Ceiling. And the Stones have had a song, and the video was great, called Shattered. Okay. So I'm thrilled to report, if you haven't read about it, it's irrelevant whether you are a sports fan or not. But there was an impactful hire last week. It was historic. And whether it be for women, for minorities, and for men as well, when the Miami Marlins and Derek Jeter, who's one of the owners, hired Kim Ang, to become the first female GM and director of baseball operations in Major League Baseball. It's truly unbelievable, and I've followed this woman's career, and I'm not even a Yankee fan because I always saw that. She's been in the business since she was 21. She was hired out of University of Chicago as an intern by the White Sox. And it took her 30 years to get to this pinnacle. And during that time, she interviewed for, I think it's 5 or 6 general manager jobs. And every time a man with a fraction of her credentials, she's off the charts. She's arguably the most, skillful person in almost any industry who has not been hired, for her skill set, and people with inferior talents were. No offense to those particular men, but that's bottom line. Thoughts on this? Because it's fairly interesting. I think it's wonderful, it's the way I look at it. But
No, and I agree, but I think that we're seeing minorities in general, whether women, people of color, being embraced, and the general public recognizing that they're worthy of opportunity, and kind of breaking the mold and looking beyond the norm. So, we have Kamala Harris, who just made her speech on election night, where she said she's shattered the glass ceiling, and she's happy she was able to do this for lots of little girls who were watching her. And so I think similarly, this, woman who is now going to be the first general manager of a professional sports team, it's going to lead to others. She has now broken the mold. I'm sure that she will be very effective and capable and do a great job. But, these things do take time. Change is not easy, regardless, again, of, it's not specific to a particular industry. I think sports in general has always been a boys' club. And in part, probably because there was an assumption that men were more comfortable communicating with men who might understand them better than a woman. I think that has changed. And as people now think differently and embrace one another, that in some cases women have a different point of view and approach things differently, and maybe are better at some jobs. And so, who knows? We'll see. She may outperform some of the other male general managers.
Yeah, listen, part of it goes back to collaboration. I don't know how I could say this delicately, but when I'm sitting around a conference room table with 8 Caucasian men who are all in their 50s and 60s, the end of the day, yes, we're all different, but the thought process is a little too similar. And to me, that doesn't lead to creativity. It doesn't lead to solutions in the same manner. If I'm sitting at a table and there's women of all ages at the table, that there's people of color at the table, well, because the fact that everyone speaks and thinks differently adds to the equation. It's 1 and 1 equals 5 in that calculation. It doesn't equal 2, and it's and so it's that's why I'm very excited about this hire, because I just think it just I think what she said was, people are looking for hope. This is Kim Ang. People are looking for hope. People are always looking for inspiration. I'm just glad to be part of the conversation, because it's going to lead to better things.
Could you just help me resolve this issue with the landlord work letter?
Why don't you come back later?
Okay.
Hey, can you help me with this letter of intent?
Not now.
Hey Rich, can you please help me with this good guy guarantee language?
Not now. There should be a better place for my brokers to get these answers.
Now there is. Leasing REality. Master your leasing domain.
With commercial real estate data spread across disparate sources, we know how difficult it can be to make strategic decisions. REonomy, though, they've revolutionized this process, centralizing access to commercial real estate information and giving you more confidence to discover new opportunities. With delivery to fit your workflow and a team of experts to partner with, your team will be empowered to identify opportunities, better understand your market, and gain a competitive edge. They're trusted by some of the top national brokerages, including Cushman, CBRE, Newmark, Marcus and Millichap, and many more. So I ask you, are you interested in learning more? Head to reonomy.com/deals to request a customized demo. That's REonomy/deals. But Adelaide, I'm just going to ask you about, there's a song by the Grateful Dead. It's called Touch of Grey. And in it, there's a line that says, I see you've got your list out, say your piece and get it out. So as a means of being productive to, those in our industry, and whether it's on the sales, leasing side, development side, construction, whatever, any pet peeves that you'd like to say your piece on and get it out?
No, I don't have any pet peeves. I like.
I find that hard to believe.
I will say that, you have to put in the time. You have to put in the experience. You have to pay your dues. It took me 30 years to become an overnight sensation. So many young agents think that brokerage is easy. It looks easy. It seems easy. The results are pretty phenomenal. The money is great. So it looks like anyone can do it. Unfortunately, once they get in, they realize that it isn't so simple, and it does require skill, and it does require tenacity. And that's where we lose people, when they realize that, yay, you know what, I really actually have to work. So I'm happy that we're part of the situation where it looks easy, but I really hoped expectations would be managed better. And if there's anything I can say to that point, it would be, do your research, find out what really is behind the scenes and what's involved. And don't be so cavalier about an industry that you don't know about. Get in there, understand it, mentor in it. Get a mentorship, be an intern, and learn it.
Well said, my friend. So Robin, I'm going to stick with the Touch of Grey song. And it starts off with a line that it must be getting early, clocks are running late. So given the mandate, I think it was last week on November 13th, Friday, requiring all restaurants and bars and gyms, well, gyms aren't serving alcohol, but stop serving at the very early hour of 10 p.m. How do you think the hospitality industry is going to, yet again, with props out to a Bowie song and Touch of Grey, how are they going to turn and face the strange of these changes that are coming our way so that they will get by and they will survive?
I think it's been extremely tough for the whole hospitality industry, and many of them have shuttered. And, those that are strongest and have staying power, hopefully can make it through this and come out on the other side. I think, going back to staying power, reinvention, being relevant, that is necessary in good times, and in particular in these challenging times. So if a restaurant has to shutter early, perhaps they have to do other things, because they're not going to be banging up the bar bill from 10 p.m. on now, and that's going to be a huge loss of revenue. They could be serving breakfast. They could be doing delivery of breakfast and lunch, so that they are active more day parts and bringing in additional income, perhaps before they were dinner and they were late night. They need to do more during the day. They need to deliver picnic baskets, holiday meals. They could be delivering alcoholic drinks with hors d'oeuvres. So there are all of these things that I actually see a lot of restaurants doing, because they know that they have to offer more creative kinds of offerings in order to expand their business. They can't be doing same old, because they've got all these restrictions. So I think, the outdoor dining has been wonderful. We'll see as winter comes what happens with that. And frankly, whether some of these outdoor things that are now almost mimicking an indoor scenario are going to be, acceptable and safe. I think they're continuing to figure it out. And as we see the ebb and flow of this pandemic and the new regulations, they're going to have to be reactive, responsive, creative, and extremely proactive if they want to continue to be able to sustain their business.
So, you're absolutely right. So, Adelaide, I want to ask you a question. Both of you live in Manhattan, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you like the fact, and I'm not there right now, but how do you like the fact that, outdoor dining seemingly is here to stay? And, I've heard some people complain that, well, Manhattan's going to become a pedestrian mall of some sorts, and I'm not in agreement with that, because part of the beauty of the city and part of the reason why I don't think we're going to come back unless, hospitality comes back. Why is the city so cool other than the architecture and the locations? Because of the vibe, because of the culture, because of all the places you can go, the experiences that you could have. What's it like, right now living in the city? Is it, do you see like and unfortunately, and I'm rambling on a little bit here, global warming has helped out, at least in the fact of how beautiful it was up until, last week, really. Okay. But how is it living in the city right now?
Did you want me to go first?
Yeah, I want you to go. Yeah. It was really addressed to you, but I'm just curious.
The city doesn't seem much different than before. It's busy. There are people out and about. The subways are not as crowded. The streets, however, are very crowded because everyone's taking cars instead of the subway. And that's adding to vehicular congestion, not to mention the streets are more narrow, like to your point. And it is becoming a little bit of a challenge to be a driver or to be in a car, to be on the street trying to get around. It's busy, but it's not the same vibe, to your point. There are people out and about, but there are not the same kinds of people. So usually I would walk up Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't understand most of the people speaking because they were all tourists. We don't have that right now. We have everyone speaking English for the most part. So we have people in stores, but they're not really busy. I had a friend come down and she was walking around the street saying, wow, there's nobody here. She came back another 4 weeks later and she was walking, someone bumped into her. Her cell phone fell down. She looked up and said, thank you. She was so happy to be bumped into by people. She hadn't seen that in 6 months. So it's kind of telling to see that there is action. It's just not the same action.
I think, you're making a good point. And so what's happened is most of the offices are predominantly empty in Midtown. The tourists, for the most part, are not running around New York. And so all of the activity is in the residential areas. And we're seeing deal making focused on those residential areas because there are people on the street, Upper East Side, Upper West Side. Adelaide, you're in the Village. I'm up on East 86, and I got to tell you, you can't even maneuver on the sidewalk up there because it is so busy. And if you go down Second Avenue in the 80s, you have a half a dozen to a dozen restaurants that do have outdoor dining, and they're slammed. They're busy. We met, we hadn't been out. I think I've been out twice to outdoor areas of restaurants with friends and maybe twice for business. And otherwise, we used to eat out like every other day. We're eating at home for safety reasons. But we met friends this weekend that we had seen before and they hadn't been out since they saw us. So we all felt very safe. We went to a restaurant that had a large enclosure with the plastic and the heat lamps. And we said to them, look, we don't want to sit in a plastic enclosure. We're not comfortable. I don't know that it's any different than being inside the restaurant. We want to sit outside. And they carried 2 tables outside, put them together with chairs, and we took off our masks and we ate outside. So I do think, number one, everybody does what they're comfortable with. There are some people that are comfortable being very active, going to the office, going, and socializing, restaurants. There are people that are less comfortable doing that and do it in moderation. And there are people that aren't leaving their house. So there are, there's no right, there's no wrong. With regard to the outdoor dining, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Hey, business is picking up. You gotta love it.
I travel quite a bit, and for years I would be in Europe and eating outdoor on the plazas and eating in the middle of this, the streets. They'd have like the meridian in the middle of the streets with the outdoor dining. And I constantly said to my husband, why don't they do more of this in New York? Why aren't we outside? Why are we missing this energy and this vibe and the sense of community with everybody dining outside and watching the world go by? So I like it. I think it makes sense. I think it adds to as Adelaide said, the vibrancy that in part we are missing in a lot of neighborhoods. And I think that to some extent, based on a model that makes sense with some regulation and rules and regs, it should be something that they maintain permanently.
To that point, I just want to say that just to give you a sense of my day, Larry.
Yeah.
So today I have a dinner with 5 colleagues outdoors. Tomorrow I am going on a hosted historian tour with a group of women, and they hired an historian to take us around Hudson Yards and the Hell's Kitchen. And it's going to be, limited to 10 people, but it's going to be something that's, exciting. It's our new socialization kind of venue.
Yeah, it's all adapting, and you're doing things, that you might not have done before. You're just you're finding those experiences a little bit different, and you're experiencing them differently. So I want to talk about retail's equivalent of back office space. And this is for both of you, namely Casper-like ghost or cloud kitchens, this cook and delivery only establishments in urban areas and even, high density suburban areas that are becoming a further threat to retail and even the restaurant industry. So it props out to Motown sensations, the Temptations, and Rock and Roll Hall of Famers, the Police. Can you tell us if there's any sunshine on a cloudy day about this new ghost in the machine, that's now trending, and it's both in retail and investment sales markets? What do you think about this whole concept of ghost kitchens? Here to stay? And then how's it impacting on some of the properties that your clients have, Adelaide, and how's it affecting your retailers, Robin? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll start. So, my answer is going to be 2-part. With regard to ghost kitchens, think about it. It's very funny when we do tours of restaurant space. Most New York operators can have a space that's a couple of 1,000 feet, and they have a kitchen that's 300 feet. It's like a closet. And they are able miraculously to operate effectively. We have chains come in that build, Panera and whoever, they build to national standards, and they have like a 2,000-foot kitchen with a 3,000-foot restaurant. And we're like, oh my God, what are they thinking? So what these ghost kitchens allow restaurants to do is to, in fact, have a kitchen that's more than a few thousand feet, not be paying top dollar in rent, and do some of their prep offsite, whether it's for a restaurant, for a catering business, for fast serve restaurants, which, by the way, now a lot of them do not want to operate with full venting, which is much harder to accommodate. Landlords don't love having a vented restaurant with the loading, the deliveries, and the noise, and the garbage, and the precipitators that have to be cleaned, and venting issues. So more and more, I think the ghost kitchen concept, and particularly now with the pandemic, with delivery of food being more prevalent than in some areas, dining inside, I think the ghost kitchen concept is to some degree here to stay. And it's also, number 2, a function of New York in part being over retailed, We have continued to see new development incorporate retail on multiple levels at the base of every new building, which was not the case years ago. And so we have a growing population, but we have much more retail space, you know, in conjunction with the growing population. So somebody's got to absorb this space. The apparel tenants have wound down, with e-commerce leading to taking fewer stores and smaller stores. So we see other uses with more vacancy and therefore lowering rents and less competition for space. We see uses that couldn't afford retail space traditionally now absorbing that space. The ghost kitchens are one of those uses. We have medical, wellness, health and beauty. You know, we've got 10 dental, and we've got the urgent cares and the concierge medicals and small door veterinarian. All of these concepts that we didn't used to see in street front space are now taking high profile, visible retail space because they're more affordable.
Rosa, when it comes to, and I'm gonna switch over to you, Adelaide, do you find that it's broadening and making it easier possibly for your clients to sell some spaces because of the use? Like if there was a small warehouse space of 6,000-7,000 square feet, a building, now that seems to be a use that can be used for ghost kitchen, because I'm seeing it in the outer boroughs a lot, that a lot of my clients who have that type of space, all of a sudden, where it was very limited in what can be done with a 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot, you know, space, they're now, you know, even, you know, greater than that, they're now finding this use with, you know, ghost kitchen. Are you seeing any uptick, or, you know, is there any marketing being, you know, made towards those who are looking for ghost kitchens on the sales side?
I haven't seen that. I look at it this way: any repurposing of vacant space is a good thing, especially if they can pay rent of some sort, and if they can activate the space so that it looks like there is activity and some energy in a property. What I'm seeing is the value of properties has a better shot of being increased if there is a tenant in it, and the ghost kitchen is a tenant. So any warm bodies in a space is a good thing.
You know, absolutely. Because I know over the years, you know, you've dealt with so many different trends, and you've been a trendsetter on it. So I was just curious, you know, as to you know, your outlook as it relates to, you know, investment sales. Do you see it being somewhat flat over the coming, you know, whatever year or two, or, you know, who knows?
I'm not saying flat. I'm saying a lot of people getting ready to pull the trigger. I'm seeing a lot of owners starting to come to terms with values. I'm getting a lot of inquiries for opinions of values. I'm getting a lot of phone calls about, what do you think? What's the future? How many months? How many years do we wait? When do we position ourselves to be ready to sell? And most of what I say is there are a lot of good reasons to sell today. We could get worse, right? So now's a good time to take some money off the table. And remember, you're selling in a low market. What does that mean? You can deploy your capital to buy in a low market. So if you've brought an asset to the whole stage of redevelopment from when you bought it to where it is today, take the money out and go buy something and do it all over again, because you're buying at a low basis again. So, and again, you could do capital gains, you could do 31. There are options out there, and there is plenty to buy.
Yeah. And the cost of capital is cheap as well right now. You know, I read today, which, you know, piggybacks into just, you know, going off on something I didn't plan on talking about, but the CEO of the Marriott hotels said he doesn't see hotels coming back for 4 or 5 years. You know, how does that impact the volume, Adelaide? You know, there's talk out there that 50% of the hotels in New York will close within the next 6 to 9 months. I mean, how does that impact the market? Is it too much? Is it too much to look at?
It is too much. It's going to be hard. What I'm seeing is there are buyers out there that are looking at these hotel buildings for different uses. So in one case, I'm showing a school, a hotel. I have a TV production company looking at a small hotel. They would put their people there when they fly them in from out of state. They would have classes there. They would have their show there. So it's again, finding users, believe it or not, finding institutions that never had a place to bring their teaching or their students here, and now they want a building they can buy. They can afford to buy now, where before they could not. So it's really being creative and thinking out of the box and finding users who could, all right, we're not going to find that many, but finding those users who want to buy a building that they can call their own. The building I sold on 32nd Street, I sold to the New York Book Press. They were not in the market to buy until they realized, hey, this is a good idea. So it's
when you do the analysis versus rent and buy, it's like,
right, exactly. Even though rent sounds good today, that doesn't mean it's going to remain cheap and low and all of that. And not to mention, when you own your building, you control your building and you control what you're doing with it. You're not being told you can't come in today or you have to do it this way. So you have control over your destiny and your asset, and you're building equity.
it helps. I hear you. So you had mentioned before, so a line or the name of the song, Adelaide, from, I think it was you, by Tom Petty, called Free Falling. And so in this market where it's perceived by many that rents are free falling, which impacts, both obviously retail, office, and investment sales because of, cap rates, what advice would you give? And I'm asking you first, Adelaide, what advice would you give to a real estate owner if you're basically giving them the truth as to what's going on in the marketplace, so they don't walk away from your conversation singing I'm Not Down by it's a song by The Clash?
So it's very specific to each individual owner and their asset. If they're over leveraged, then we have a different conversation. If they don't have debt or they have very little debt and they could weather the storm, then I explain to them that this is just a blip in a very big picture. And this will come back. New York City always does, and we know this from cycles past. New York City comes back. Values will go higher than before. It's going to be an exciting time to be a New York City owner in the next few years. And I think we'll see values we have not seen before. If you can get through this part of the storm, which is very intense, and you could hold on, then wait, play it out, take a tenant at whatever rent you can get, keep the income coming in to pay the bills, and hold on. If you don't have that luxury, then you have to sell. Now's a good time to get out before things change and before the market gets flooded with people who have to sell. We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen this flood of foreclosures. We haven't seen this wave of REOs. If that's going to happen, get out now. If you're worried. If you're not worried, hold on and ride it out.
Well said. Robin, you have anything to add to that on the retail side?
Yeah, I mean, look, as we said before, in this market, there are no standards and there are no rules. And we are telling all of our owners and our tenants to look to do creative and flexible deals and to partner with one another for things that make sense. And in every situation, as Adelaide said, that changes. It depends on the players. So the brokers are working a little bit harder because we're doing a lot of short-term deals.
Yes.
There are a lot of owners that are saying, I will be opportunistic, but that doesn't mean locking it at 10% of the old pre-COVID market for 20 years. I'll lock in at half of market for 2-3 years, and then I want to reestablish what market might be and go out long-term at that time. So, I think every deal is again going to be looked at on its own merits, that there is potential to do all kinds of creative things, whether it's short-term, long-term, to accommodate the changing market and the unknowns. But people are out there taking advantage because it is an opportunistic time.
Oh, absolutely. And just going back to one other thing that we said before about, when we were talking about some of the younger people in entering the business, this is an unbelievable time to learn because of all the stress. It's how I learned real estate. So, just on that note, the other thing is just, with these rents and, whether the landlord wants to enter into a longer term lease, I'm finding on some of the deals I have going now that for the first few years of the deal, say 21 and 22, they're playing the game as to whether it's 50%, 60% of 2019 rates, but comes year 3 or 4, they're structuring the deal that, hey, hey, you're bumping up to those 2019 rates. Are you seeing any of that in your deals yet? Is that happening?
We're seeing that in all of our deals. And although we are doing a lot of 2-3-year deals, 5-year deals with owners who won't lock in at low rents for 10 years and tenants who don't want to commit to a bump, we're also, strangely enough, doing some long-term deals. I was saying to Adelaide this morning, we have a 20-year supermarket deal that we're looking to do for an entire block front that we couldn't get positioned pre-COVID because we didn't have enough motivation on both sides. And now everybody's focused and facing reality. We're doing a huge deal for a space that had been a well-known high-end restaurant with a medical use, going back to repurposing of space. And that's with a co-op, and they want to do a 25-year deal with fixed increases because they don't want to go through all of these cycles and have vacancy and headaches. They'd rather have, an annuity where they have a stable tenant at a good rent, and don't have to worry again about, blips in the road. So, there's no one answer, there's no right or wrong. It's whatever works for the parties. And again, we're just being very flexible in how we structure things. We are twisting and turning. So some deals that may start as long-term deals get repositioned as short-term deals because we have challenges with tenant wanting to start at a lower rent and perhaps landlord doesn't want to lock in long-term. So every negotiation is different, but we are seeing tenants re-engage. And I think we are seeing landlord understand that we are now in COVID territory, that there does have to be an accommodation minimally for the year or two preceding us because there's so many unknowns, and that if they can get a tenant and they can accommodate, do a deal that's a little bit in keeping with pre-COVID, but they give the tenant 50% rent for a year, 75% for a year, and then they go to what the assumption is that a real rent might be. So there are all of these, again, creative scenarios that are being structured, and it's actually kind of cool to see that there is no standard. It's whatever works in each situation.
Well, listen, I'm very happy that a lot of the landlords are seeing it that way, because I'm a big believer in life and in business that a good percentage of something is better than 100% of nothing that comes with vacant space. You never get back that lost rent. And, I'm sure you've heard me babble this before, but, I have the short version of my drive-in movie theater theory is having vacant space is like going to a drive-in movie theater in a taxi cab with the taxi cab driver, while none of you are wearing masks and the meter is running. It makes no sense. So I'm glad that some level of price capitulation is happening. So as sadly as this may be, we're coming to a close, and I want you to both to tackle the following question. Adelaide, you're going to be up first. So in the classic REM song from the 80s called It's the End of the World as We Know It, it started trending heavily at the beginning of the pandemic. And so in closing, I want you to tell us why, Adelaide, you are not making the Elvis Costello song Waiting for the End of the World your mantra, but rather embracing the lyrics of the REM song And I Feel Fine.
Well, every cycle has its twists and turns, and there is panic sometimes and uncertainty, and there's loss. But I believe that I predict prices and values will surpass anything we have seen before. I believe that this is going to be the great big city short, where everything is so devalued today that if anyone who's smart enough, be it from another country, be it big family members, be it big funds, comes in and just buys everything they could get their hands on, how smart are they going to look in 10 years when they've owned all of this great New York City real estate that they could not have purchased in years past and will not be able to purchase in years going forward because the values will be so high. I believe that, I'm going to go with Journey and Don't Stop Believing. This is New York City.
You gotta believe.
You gotta believe. This is New York City. We ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, and along with what you just said is that applies to all the people in 2010 and 11 who did just what you're saying right now. And they went from maybe being members, exaggerating the point of the middle class, to being, quite comfortable. So amen.
When to get out.
Yeah. Robin, your turn, my friend.
Yeah, I agree. And to reiterate, it's an opportunistic time. We had a lot of tenants that had pulled out of the market. Initially our business was heavy on fashion, luxury, international brands. We, of course, have become broader as we're talking about medical and grocers and compounding pharmacies and all the uses that are now expanding. But we're seeing the fashion tenants now start to re-engage. They were pushed out of the market when the rents got overly aggressive on all the high profile corridors, whether it was Meatpacking, Soho, Madison, Fifth. Now we're seeing these bargain rents in many cases, and tenants that are taking advantage of it. We have an Italian shoe tenant who pulled out of the market. We looked with him for 3 years. Deals were on, deals were off. Now we're getting a deal done. We have a home furnishing tenant from the UK. We looked with them. We also put in proposals. They got cold feet. We were looking at 7-figure rents. Now they're saying the space we looked at 2 years ago is half the money. We have to re-engage and we have to position a deal, because we will kick ourselves if we don't do it today. So I do think that we are going to see deals being made. We are going to see a more dynamic environment. And as Adelaide said, this is the time to be bold, to be brave, and to execute before we have a full recovery and you're priced out of the market again.
Amen. Thank you so much. Both of you were wonderful. Highlight of my day. Thank you so much. Listen, be well, take care of yourself, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for having us.
Take care. Be well.
Please know that it would be greatly appreciated if you could kindly download, subscribe, rate, and review Real Estate Reality Check on Apple Podcasts by way of the episode page, podcast page, or RErealitycheck.com. The content of this podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to solicit business or to provide legal advice. Our listeners should not take or refrain from taking any legal action based upon the information contained in this podcast without first seeking professional counsel. Prior results do not guarantee future success. Are you on the search for dynamic legal representation for you and/or your business? Abrams, Garfinkel, Margolis, Bergson LLP's full-service law firm is dedicated to smart, practical, and cost-effective counsel, providing the highest level of legal services to its clients. The AGMB team primarily represents clients in residential and commercial real estate transactions, banking, brokerage, and mortgage compliance, as well as entertainment industry services. AGMB has offices located in New York, Long Island, and California. Learn more and visit agmblaw.com today.